Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back to the golden age of the Mali Empire, to a city whose name has become a synonym for the impossibly remote, Timbuktu. But in the 14th century, it wasn't the end of the world. It was the center of a bustling, brilliant hub of scholarship, trade, and thought. Now, a quick heads up. Modern life has made us soft. There's no air conditioning, no memory foam mattress, and definitely no smartphone to scroll through until 2 a.m. You'd probably last a week before begging for a lukewarm cup of instant coffee. But for tonight, we'll pretend we're resilient, so. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a small, quiet way to support these journeys. And for a bit of fun, leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is. It's always a quiet thrill to see this sleepy community stretch across so many time zones. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the silence. It's a deep, heavy quiet, the kind that only exists in the profound darkness just before dawn. There is no alarm clock, no distant traffic, only the gentle, rhythmic sound of your own breathing in a small, dark room. You are lying on a firm surface, a mat of intricately woven reeds that feels cool against your back. You shift, and the reeds whisper against the fabric of your simple tunic. Historians still wonder what the preferred bedding of the time truly was, if a tanned animal hide stuffed with dried grasses was considered more of a luxury, or if the cool firmness of a reed mat was the prized possession in this warm climate. For you, it is simply what you know. It's familiar, grounding, a sliver of pale silver light stretches across the far wall, a perfect rectangle painted by the moon through a small, high window. The air in the room is still and cool, carrying the earthy, mineral scent of the walls themselves. Your home is made of banko, a mixture of clay, straw, and rice husks, baked hard by the relentless sun. The walls are incredibly thick, a simple and brilliant technology designed to absorb the day's heat and slowly release it during the cool desert night, acting as a natural radiator. By the time you wake, all the heat is gone, and the room is a cool sanctuary against the coming day. You sit up, your bare feet finding the floor. It's smooth, but slightly uneven, cool, and a little gritty under your soles. The silence outside is beginning to fray at the edges. You can just make out the soft, lowing sound of a cow in a nearby courtyard, and the faint, shuffling sound of your mother already awake in the next room, preparing the morning's grain. Soon, the first call to prayer will echo across the city, a sound that acts as a collective timepiece for all of Timbuktu. But for now, in these fleeting moments, the world belongs only to the quiet and the dark. You stand and stretch, your hands almost able to touch the low ceiling. Your room is small, an alcove really, furnished with little more than your sleeping mat and a wooden chest that holds your other tunic and a few personal treasures. There is no clutter. Life here is distilled to its essentials, leaving your mind wonderfully unburdened. Your purpose for the day is already set, and it has been your purpose for years. You are an apprentice, not to a merchant or a craftsman, but to a master of the written word. You work in one of the city's great private libraries, a quiet custodian of knowledge in a place renowned across Africa and the Middle East for its devotion to books. Walking over to a corner of the room, you dip a small gourd into a large earthenware pot. The water is cool, almost cold. Another small miracle of desert architecture. The porous clay of the pot allows a tiny amount of water to seep through and evaporate on the surface, constantly cooling the contents within. You splash the water on your face, the shock of it waking you completely. It smells of earth and rain, a precious scent in this city on the edge of the Great Sahara. There is no mirror to check your reflection. You know your own face by feel. by the familiar shape of it in your hands. Asterisk, you pull on your other tunic. The fabric coarse but clean, and tie a simple leather cord around your waist. Your master, a quiet and thoughtful man named Al-Hassan, expects punctuality. He believes the day's first light is the best for reading, when the mind is clear and the air is still cool. Your work is not one of heavy labor, but it requires a different kind of strength, patience. Immense, unending patience. You are a guardian of stories, of science, of poetry, and of faith, all painstakingly captured on fragile pages. And today, like every day, you will walk through the waking city to continue your silent, essential work. You open the heavy wooden door of your home, its surface worn smooth by generations of hands. The air that greets you is cool and dry, and the sky is no longer black, but a deep, velvety indigo, with the first hint of pale gold just touching the eastern horizon. The journey to the library begins. Asterisk, you step out into the narrow alleyway, pulling the heavy wooden door closed behind you. It settles into its frame with a solid, reassuring thud. The air is noticeably cooler out here than it was in your room, a dry cold that feels clean and invigorating. You are in a slender passage between two tall earthen houses, a space so narrow you could almost touch both walls if you stretched out your arms. This design is intentional. The streets and alleys of Timbuktu are a maze of tight corridors, a brilliant and simple feat of engineering. A modern city planner might have a seizure, but the person who designed this understood the sun. These narrow passages create rivers of shadow, protecting you from the heat that will soon become the day's main antagonist. Asterisk, you turn onto a slightly wider street, the main artery of your neighborhood. The ground beneath your leather sandals is a mix of hard-packed earth and fine, reddish sand that whispers with each step. The sky above is transforming, the deep indigo surrendering to a soft, bruised purple at the zenith, and a vibrant peachy orange at the eastern horizon. The world is slowly filling with color. The buildings around you are magnificent in their simplicity. They are mostly 2 stories high, with flat roofs where families sleep on the hottest nights. Their thick sloping banco walls are studded with rows of protruding wooden beams, called torin. These beams are not just for decoration. They are a permanent form of scaffolding, allowing workers to climb the walls and apply a fresh layer of mud plaster after the rainy season. It gives the city's architecture a unique, almost bristly appearance, as if the buildings are holding their breath. Asterisk, just then, it begins. A single voice, clear and resonant, rises from the minaret of the nearby Jingerbur Mosque, the first call to prayer. Within moments, other voices from other mosques join in, layering over one another in a beautiful, cascading harmony that washes over the sleeping city. It's a sound that is both a call and a comfort, a citywide alarm clock that speaks not of urgency, but of reverence. You see a few other figures emerge from their doorways, their silhouettes dark against the brightening sky. An elderly man nods to you, his face a beautiful map of wrinkles. You incline your head in return. A silent greeting exchanged between 2 people, sharing the quiet magic of the dawn. Asterisk, you continue your walk, your path taking you through the heart of the waking city. There are no street signs here, no neatly labeled avenues. You navigate by instinct, by the specific curve of a wall, by a uniquely carved door, by the scent of the baker's oven that you are now approaching. The aroma of fresh bread, a warm, yeasty, slightly smoky smells, one of the first to greet the Timbuktu morning. You pass the open front of the bakery, a deep cavern lit by the glowing orange heart of the oven. Inside, a man dusted in flour moves with an unhurried grace, sliding flat loaves onto a long wooden paddle. You feel a pang of hunger, but you know your morning meal will come later, after the first tasks at the library are done. Asterisk, as you walk, you realize something you've never consciously considered. You feel completely safe. There are no city guards patrolling the streets. no watchman calling out the hour. Historians still debate how a city of this size and importance maintained its security. Was it a formal, but discreet, patrol of Tuareg warriors who protected the city's outer limits? Or was the peace kept by the simple, powerful force of shared faith and close community? You suspect it's the latter. In a city where everyone knows everyone, and where a scholar is more revered than a wealthy merchant, the social fabric itself is the strongest wall. Asterisk, you pass a small, dusty square that will, in a few hours, be a bustling market. Right now, it is empty, a silent stage of vacant stalls and tethering posts. A lone goat, tied to one of the posts, watches you pass with an expression of profound indifference, chewing on some unseen morsel. It's strangely amusing, a silent, four-legged critic of your morning commute. You turn a final corner, and the character of the street changes. The buildings here are a bit larger, the doorways more ornate. This is the Quarter of Scholars, home to the University of Sankar and the city's most prestigious libraries. Asterisk, and there it is, at the end of the lane, your destination. It is a two-story building, much like the others, but the wooden door is larger, bound with strips of iron and decorated with geometric carvings. The Toran beams on this building seem more pronounced, and the walls are a smooth, pale ochre, clearly well maintained. Thizzy. You place your hand on the large iron ring that serves as a handle for the library door. It's cold and heavy, a stark contrast to the warm wood surrounding it. You don't knock. Al-Hassan is a man of routine, and he will already be waiting. You pull the heavy door open, its iron hinges groaning a low, familiar complaint. It's a sound you've come to associate with the start of your day, a kind of formal announcement that you are crossing a threshold. You slip inside, pulling the door shut behind you, and for a moment, you are in near total darkness. Asterisk, the air changes instantly. Outside, it was cool and dry. Inside, it is cooler still, but with a different quality. It's thick, heavy, and carries a scent that is unique to this place. It's the smell of old paper, a dry, slightly sweet aroma like fallen leaves. Underneath that is the rich, animal scent of leather from the hundreds of book bindings, and the fainter, mineral temps of the ink. And woven through it all is a subtle, spicy perfume of cloves and old wood. It's a scent that calms you immediately, a fragrance that means you are home in a different sense. It is the smell of knowledge. Asterisk, as your eyes adjust to the gloom, the room begins to take shape. You are in a small, square antechamber. To your right, a narrow staircase made of mud brick leads to the upper floor. Ahead of you is an arched doorway, draped with a heavy cloth to keep out dust. From behind that curtain, you see the soft, flickering glow of a single oil lamp. You walk towards it, your footsteps silent on the smooth, hard-packed floor. Asterisk, you push the heavy fabric aside and step into the main library, and even though you see it every day, it never fails to take your breath away. The room is not grand in the way a European cathedral is grand. There are no soaring ceilings or stained glass windows. Its magnificence is quieter, more intimate. The walls are lined with niches, small, rectangular alcoves cut directly into the banco, and in each niche, stacked neatly on their sides, are the books. They are not standing upright, as modern books do. They are laid flat, one on top of the other, to protect their spines. Each stack is a neat, orderly pile of leather-bound treasure. Asterisk, dozens of these niches fill the walls, rising from the floor almost to the ceiling. In the center of the room, several large wooden chests sit on the floor, their lids closed. These contain the most valuable manuscripts, ancient texts from the great libraries of Alexandria and Baghdad, commentaries on the Quran, and original works by the scholars of Timbuktu itself. There are no tables or chairs, only a few reed mats scattered on the floor for reading. This is not a place for idle browsing. It is a repository, a vault, A lone figure is sitting on one of the mats, hunched over the flickering oil lamp. It is Al-Hassan, your master. He is a man made of quiet stillness, his movements always measured and deliberate. He looks up as you enter, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners in a silent welcome. He is already at work, his fingers delicately cleaning the cover of a small, leather-bound volume. Asterisk, the sun is rising, he says, his voice a low, raspy whisper that seems to be a permanent feature of working in a library. It's as if his voice has adapted to its surroundings, so as not to disturb the sleeping words. Asterisk, and the city with it, you reply. The traditional response. Asterisk, you walk over and sit on a mat opposite him. The lamplight casts long dancing shadows on the walls, making the niches full of books look like dark, mysterious caves. It's a beautiful, almost sacred space. The silence in here is even more profound than it was in your room. It's a silence full of weight, full of the unheard voices of poets, scientists, mathematicians, and theologians, all waiting patiently within their leather covers. The quirky detail that always makes you smile is the faint, almost imperceptible sound you can hear if you listen closely. A tiny, rustling, crinkling sound. It's the sound of hundreds of pages of parchment and paper settling in the cool air. A collective sigh from the centuries of accumulated wisdom. Asterisk. Historians often focus on the famous mosques and universities of Timbuktu, but it was these private libraries, often hidden away in the homes of scholarly families, like the decay, that formed the true intellectual heart of the city. There were dozens of them, containing an estimated total of over 700,000 manuscripts. At the empire's height, Al-Hassan's library holds perhaps 20,000 of those, each one handwritten, a unique and irreplaceable object. Your job is not simply to read them, but to protect them. Your apprenticeship is in the art of preservation, a constant, quiet battle against the three great enemies of books in this climate. And as Al-Hassan hands you a soft cloth made from goat hair, your daily war is about to begin. The first enemy is always the simplest: dust, the ever-present fine red dust of the Sahara, which, if left unchecked, will grind away at paper and ink until nothing is left. Asterisk, your first task of the day is a ritual, a slow, methodical process that borders on meditation. Al-Hassan nods towards a stack of manuscripts in a nearby niche, and you understand immediately. You rise, cross the room, and carefully take the top volume from the pile. It feels dense and solid in your hands, a small, weighty package of thought. You carry it back to your mat and place it gently on a clean, tanned hide that serves as your workspace. Asterisk, the ritual is about opening the library, but not in the sense of unlocking doors for visitors. It's about waking the books themselves, preparing them for the day, and ensuring their continued survival. You take the soft goat hair cloth Al-Hassan gave you and begin to dust the cover. It's a satchel-style binding, common for the region, made of rich, dark goatskin leather, dyed a deep mahogany. It has a long flap that wraps around the front of the book and tucks under a leather thong, completely encasing the text block. This design itself is the first line of defense against the elements. Asterisk, you wipe every surface with slow, deliberate strokes. You are not just cleaning. You are inspecting. You are looking for any new scuffs in the leather, any sign of fraying on the thong, any hint of weakness. The book is not an inert object. It is a complex organism with its own vulnerabilities. Al-Hassan taught you that the first time you ever handled a manuscript. Treat it not as paper, he had whispered, but as a very, very old man. With respect, with gentle hands, and always listen to what it tells you. You found it a strange thing to say at the time, but now you understand. The book speaks through its stiffness, its scent, its subtle changes in texture. Asterisk, once the outside is clean, you perform the most delicate part of the operation, opening it. You untuck the flap and gently unfold the cover. The pages within are not paper in the modern sense, but either parchment made from animal skin or a thick rag-based paper imported from the Islamic world. This particular volume is made of the latter, its pages a warm, creamy color. You don't just crack the book open. Al-Hassan taught you to open it a few pages at a time from the front, then a few from the back, alternating back and forth to ease the pressure on the spine. It's a bit like helping an old man stretch in the morning. You can't just rush it. Asterisk, as you open the pages, you continue your dusting, using a smaller, softer brush made from camel hair to flick away the fine particles of sand that have inevitably found their way inside. The script is a beautiful, flowing Arabic, written in a dark brown ink made from oak galls. The calligraphy is masterful, each letter a work of art. In the margins, you see smaller, denser notes written by previous scholars, a conversation taking place across centuries on a single page. One of the lesser-known details of these Timbuktu manuscripts is the sheer variety of scripts. While many were in formal Arabic, others were written in local languages like Songhay or Filfeld, but using the Arabic alphabet. It was a practice known as Ajami, and it made the knowledge accessible beyond the circle of formal Arabic scholars. Asterisk, you work in silence. The only sounds the soft whisk of your brush and the gentle rustle of the pages. Al-Hassan works on his own volume beside you, a silent communion of shared purpose. There is no clock to watch, no deadline to meet. The work takes as long as it takes. This patient, unhurried pace is the core of your craft. Rushing is the enemy of preservation. It leads to torn pages and cracked spines. It's a lesson that has seeped into your very being. Even when you walk through the city, you find yourself moving with a more measured, deliberate gait than your friends. They sometimes tease you for being an old man already, a joke you find quietly pleasing. Asterisk, historians often wonder about the specific daily routines within these libraries. Were certain days allocated for specific tasks, like repairs or cataloging, or was the work more fluid, dictated by the immediate needs of the collection? Based on your training with Al-Hassan, you suspect it was the latter. The library was like a garden. You tended to the plants that needed it most on any given day. If a humid wind blew in from the south, the day's work would shift entirely to managing the moisture. If a new manuscript arrived via caravan, all other tasks would be set aside to assess and prepare it for its new home. Asterisk, after you finish dusting the first book, you carefully close it, rewrapping the flap and securing the thong. You place it on a separate, clean mat. Then you retrieve the next book from the stack and begin the process all over again. This will be your morning, dusting, inspecting, waking a half-dozen volumes. It might sound monotonous to an outsider, a Sisyphean task of cleaning objects that will only get dusty again tomorrow, but you don't see it that way. As the morning progresses, the single beam of light from the high window begins to crawl down the wall, a slow, golden clock hand marking the passage of time. The air in the library, once cool, is now just pleasant, but you know that outside, the sun is beginning its ascent, and with it comes the true war. Dust is a mere nuisance, a foot soldier in the army of decay. The real generals, the ones Al-Hassan taught you to truly fear, are far more insidious. Today, you will confront them all. Asterisk, the first and most relentless enemy is timidity. Timbuktu sits on the southern edge of the Sahara, so while the air is often bone dry, the city is also near the Niger River. During the rainy season, or when the winds shift, a suffocating moisture-laden air can roll into the city. For your Banco house, this is a blessing, a chance for the clay to drink. For the library, it is a catastrophe. Al-Hassan once described it to you with a grimace. Moisture is the mother of mold. Mold, the fuzzy, creeping pestilence that feeds on the organic materials of paper and leather, turning priceless texts into a pulpy, useless mush. Asterisk, you get up from your mat and walk over to one of the large chests. You lift the heavy lid, and the scent of cloves and dried herbs becomes more potent. Inside, Nestled amongst the manuscripts are small cotton bags filled with these spices. They are not here for their pleasant aroma. They absorb ambient moisture, a simple but effective technology to keep the air inside the chest dry. You lift one of the bags and give it a gentle squeeze. It feels slightly damp and clumpy. This means it has done its job and needs to be replaced. You set it aside to be taken outside later and dried in the sun, a process that recharges its absorbent properties. This is a constant, rotating duty, checking the chests, swapping the bags, and maintaining a dry microclimate for the most precious books. It's a bit like being a beekeeper, constantly checking the health of your hives. The second enemy is a more active threat, insects. Specifically, termites and bookworms, the tiny vandals that see your priceless collection, not as a font of wisdom, but as an all-you-can-eat buffet. Termites are the worst. They can tunnel through a mud brick wall and devour a stack of manuscripts from the inside out, leaving nothing but a hollowed-out shell of leather and a pile of dust. You've seen the damage they can do. Al-Hassan once showed you a beautiful 12th century text on astronomy that had been partially destroyed. A perfect clean tunnel had been bored straight through the center of the book, taking a piece of every single page with it. A silent, devastating act of vandalism. To combat them, you rely on observation and the library's very construction. The banco walls, while vulnerable, are thick. More importantly, the books are not stored on the floor, but in niches or chests raised on small wooden blocks. This makes it harder for termites to reach them and easier for you to spot the telltale mud tubes they build. Part of your daily inspection is to check the base of the walls and the legs of the chests for any sign of these incursions. You also periodically take the books outside and fan their pages in the bright sunlight, which helps to dislodge any insect eggs or larvae. It's a strange sight. A librarian standing in a courtyard, vigorously flapping a book as if trying to get it to fly. It's a quirky but essential part of the job. Historians often celebrate the intellectual content of the Timbuktu manuscripts, but the physical struggle to preserve them is a story in itself. The very materials used to make them were a form of defense. The ink, for instance, made from oak galls, was rich in tannic acid, which made it unpalatable to many insects. A lesser-known fact is that some scribes would add things like wormwood or colocynth, a bitter desert gourd, to their ink recipes as an extra repellent. It's a fascinating thought. A scribe, hundreds of years ago, thinking not just about the words he was writing, but about the tiny mouths that might one day try to eat them. But the greatest weapon in your arsenal, the one that gives this library its unique story, is something else entirely. It's a mineral, a crystal, a substance so valuable it was once traded for its weight in gold. Al-Hassan gets to his feet, a sign that the next phase of the day is about to begin. He walks over to a special, locked chest in the corner of the room, the only one with a heavy iron padlock. He produces a key from a pouch at his belt and opens it. Inside, there are no books. Instead, the chest is filled with large, rough, off-white blocks. It is salt, brought by caravan from the deep desert, and this humble mineral is your ultimate guardian. Al-Hassan lifts one of the heavy blocks, its crystalline surface glinting in the lamplight. It's time to teach you more about the desert's gold. Al-Hassan carries the block of salt over to a heavy wooden table in the center of the room, the only real piece of furniture besides the chests. He sets it down with a solid thud. The block is about the size of a large loaf of bread, and its surface is coarse and imperfect, a milky, semi-translucent white. It looks primal, something pulled from the very bones of the earth, which, in a way, it is. Everything that passes through this city, Al-Hassan begins. His voice, low and instructive, is part of a great exchange. Gold from the south, cloth from the north. But this, he taps the block with a fingernail, producing a sharp, clear clink, is the reason for it all. This is the currency of the desert. Asterisk, you know this, of course. Every child in Timbuktu grows up understanding the importance of salt. The city sits at the crossroads of two great resources, the gold mines of the south, in the lands of the Akan and Bambuk, and the salt mines of the north, deep in the Sahara, at places like Tagaza. Tagaza is a place of legend, a city literally built from blocks of salt, where the sun is merciless and the only reason to exist is to carve this mineral from the earth. From there, great caravans of camels, sometimes thousands strong, trek for weeks across the scorching sands to bring it here. A slab of salt like the one on the table might be traded for an equal weight in gold dust. To you, it's a mind-boggling equation. How can this common rock be as valuable as the most precious metal? Al-Hassan explains it simply. Down south, he says, gesturing vaguely, in the forests where the gold comes from, the air is wet. The people and their animals sweat. They lose the salt from their bodies, and there is none in the ground to replace it. They need it to live. We sit in the middle. We have access to both. That is the source of the Mali Empire's great wealth. Not the gold itself, but our position as the keepers of the balance. Asterisk. It's a powerful lesson in economics and geography, delivered in a dusty library. But you are not here to learn about trade. You are here to learn how this block of salt, this desert gold, serves a purpose far more important to you than seasoning food or preserving meat. Al-Hassan picks up a small, sharp knife. With practiced ease, he begins to shave thin, delicate flakes from the corner of the block. They fall onto a piece of leather, like a dry crystalline snow. Asterisk, the same insects that desire our books. He continues, not looking up from his work, despise this. The same moisture that encourages mold is drawn away by this. It is a guardian, a protector. Asterisk, this is the central, quirky fact that defines your work. The secret weapon of the Timbuktu librarians. Salt. It seems so counterintuitive. Wouldn't salt itself be corrosive? A lesser-known detail is that they were not using refined, powdery table salt. These were large, unrefined blocks of rock salt, which is primarily sodium chloride, but also contains other trace minerals. Its primary use in the library was not as a powder sprinkled on the pages, which would indeed be abrasive. Instead, it was used in more clever, strategic ways. Asterisk, Al-Hassan gestures for you to bring him a small bowl. You fetch one from a shelf, and he sweeps the salt flakes into it. Then he adds a tiny amount of water, just a few drops from the earthenware pot, and begins to mix it with his finger, creating a thick, gritty paste. The bookbinders use this in their glue, he explains. When they mix the acacia gum to bind the pages, or attach the leather cover, they add a little salt. The termites taste it and turn away. It is poison to them. It's a brilliant, simple form of pest control, integrated directly into the book's creation. Asterisk. Historians still debate the full extent of salt's use in manuscript preservation. While its inclusion in binding glue is a known practice, some accounts suggest more direct applications. Did they place small blocks of salt within the storage chests? Not just for humidity control, but as a direct repellent? Were the shelves themselves wiped with salt brine? The oral traditions and the surviving texts are not always specific on these trade secrets. It was knowledge passed down from master to apprentice, like the lesson you are receiving right now. Asterisk. Al-Hassan stops mixing the paste. He looks at you, his expression serious. But its most important use requires the most delicate hand. It is for guarding the covers, for driving away the moisture that softens the leather and invites the mold. And that, he says, pushing the small bowl towards you, is what you will learn today. Asterisk. He motions for you to bring him one of the lesser manuscripts. Not a priceless ancient text, but a more common book of poetry. You retrieve it, your heart beating a little faster. This is a new lesson, a step up in your training. You have handled the books, cleaned them, aired them, but you have never been allowed to apply a treatment. Today, You will learn the careful, sacred craft of guarding a book with salt. Al-Hassan takes the book of poetry you've brought him and lays it on the tanned hide. He dips a single finger into the thick, gritty salt paste you helped him prepare. He then shows you his fingertip, which is coated in a semi-transparent, grainy layer. "This is the first lesson," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "Use almost nothing. You are not painting a wall. You are applying a ghost." He takes his coated finger and begins to rub it gently along the edges of the book's leather cover. He moves in slow, circular motions, applying the barest amount of pressure. The paste is not slathered on. It's worked into the very grain of the goatskin. The small amount of moisture in the paste helps the salt crystals penetrate the pores of the leather, and then it evaporates almost instantly in the dry air, leaving the salt behind as an invisible armor. The edges are the most vulnerable, he murmurs, concentrating on his work. This is where the dampness first takes hold. It is where the bookworm, tasting the edge of a page, might begin his feast. His movements are so practiced and gentle, it looks more like he is blessing the book than cleaning it. It's a strangely intimate act, a physical communion between the guardian and the object of his care. He is tracing the book's perimeter, sealing its borders against the quiet invasions of the world. After he has treated all the edges of the front and back covers, he takes a clean dry cloth and buffs the leather. The process removes any excess salt crystals from the surface, leaving behind a smooth finish with a subtle, healthy sheen. The leather now looks richer, the deep mahogany color slightly darker and more lustrous. It feels alive under your fingers, and, if you were to put your nose close to it, you would catch the faintest, cleanest scent, like the air after a distant thunderstorm. Now, you, he says, pushing the bowl and the book towards you. Your hand feels heavy as you reach for the bowl. Your fingers tremble slightly as you dip one into the paste, trying to mimic the tiny amount your master took. You are acutely aware of Al-Hassan's eyes on you, watching your every move. It's not a look of judgment, but of intense focus. He is not just watching to see if you do it right. He is observing how you approach the task, gauging your patience and your respect for the process. You bring your finger to the edge of the book. You hesitate for a second, a flicker of fear that you will do it wrong, that you'll use too much pressure or too much paste, and somehow mar the beautiful leather. This is a common book of poetry, Al-Hassan had said, but to you, there are no common books. Every single one is a treasure, a survivor. Taking a slow breath, you begin. You press gently, moving in the same circular motion he did. The gritty texture of the salt paste feels strange under your fingertip, a fine-grained friction against the smooth leather. You try to imagine the salt seeping into the pores, standing as a microscopic army of crystals against the encroaching damp. It's a quiet, methodical task that forces you to be entirely present. Your mind can't wander. Your focus narrows to that single point of contact between your finger and the book. The world outside the library, the sounds of the waking city, the very thought of your next meal, it all fades away. There is only the book, the salt, and the slow, rhythmic movement of your hand. One of the quirky, lesser-known aspects of this technique is the debate over its aesthetic side effects. Some scholars believe this constant, gentle buffing with a slightly abrasive paste is what gave the Timbuktu manuscripts their characteristic soft, burnished leather covers. Others argue it could, over centuries, wear down the intricate tooled decorations that were often stamped into the leather. It's a classic conservator's dilemma. Does the act of preservation inevitably alter the object being preserved? You glance at the intricate, blind-tooled geometric patterns on the cover. Your mission is to protect the words inside. If that means the cover's decoration fades slightly over the next 200 years, it is a price you and Al-Hassan are willing to pay. You finish one edge and move to the next. your initial nervousness giving way to a deep, focused calm. This is more than just a job. It's a craft, a skill being passed from one generation to the next, through touch and observation, not through written instruction. There is no manual for this. The manual is Al-Hassan's hands, his quiet voice, and the feel of the materials themselves. You realize you are learning a language spoken not with words, but with pressure and texture. Asterisk when you have treated all the edges. You take a clean cloth and begin to buff the leather, just as he did. You work slowly, watching as the leather darkens and the subtle sheen returns. You feel a quiet surge of pride. You have not damaged the book. You have, in a small but meaningful way, extended its life. You have armed it for its ongoing battle against time. Asterisk, you push the book back towards Al-Hassan for his inspection. He picks it up, runs his thumb along the edges you just treated, and turns it over in his hands. He brings it close to his face, his eyes scanning the surface. The silence stretches on. Finally, he places the book back down on the mat between you. He looks at you, and a rare small smile touches his lips. Good, he says, a little slow, but good. Now, do the next one. Asterisk your morning passes, in this state of deep, meditative focus. Book after book, you repeat the ritual, the gentle dusting, the careful inspection, and the sacred application of the salt paste. With each volume, your movements become more confident, your touch more assured. You are no longer just mimicking Al-Hassan. You are starting to understand the feel of it, the rightness of a particular pressure, the subtle language of the leather. Asterisk. Finally, Al-Hassan holds up a hand. Enough for today, he says. The sun is high. The salt needs time to settle. Let us move from the body to the soul. Asterisk. He rises and walks over to one of the large, locked chests in the center of the room, not the one with the salt, but one bound in brass and made of a dark, heavy wood you don't recognize. He unlocks it with another key from his belt and lifts the lid. A wave of history seems to wash out of the chest. These are the truly ancient ones, the library's most prized possessions. He reaches in with both hands and lifts out a manuscript that is larger than the others. Its leather cover, a pale, sandy color, worn smooth with age. He carries it with the reverence of a man holding a sleeping child and places it on a special wooden stand, a kersey, designed to hold a book open for study. Asterisk. This is The Meadows of Gold by Al-Masudi, he says, his voice filled with a particular kind of awe. A history of the world, written 400 years ago in Baghdad. It traveled for a century before it found a home here. Asterisk. He carefully opens the book to a marked page, the parchment within stiff and heavy. The script is a dense, elegant, Kufic style, and the page is illuminated with breathtaking artwork. In the center of the page is a map, not a map of coastlines and borders as you might imagine, but a conceptual map of the world as understood in the 10th century. It's a beautiful, swirling diagram of interconnected circles and lines, illustrating the relationships between different climates, peoples, and humors. It looks less like a map and more like a cosmic diagram. Asterisk. Your task until midday, Al-Hassan says, is not to clean, not to mend. It is to read. But you will not just read the words. You will study the hand that wrote them. Asterisk. He wants you to practice your calligraphy, and the only way to become a master scribe is to copy the work of other masters. He hands you a wooden board, its surface polished smooth and dark with wax, and a pointed stylus. This is your practice slate, before you are ever allowed to touch ink and paper, costly and precious commodity. You must spend years perfecting your letters on a reusable wax tablet. It's a wonderfully forgiving medium. A mistake can be smoothed over with a thumb and a bit of warmth. Asterisk. You sit on a mat before the ancient book, the wax tablet in your lap. You are being asked to hold a universe in your hands. Not just the world al-Masudi describes, but the universe of artistry and skill that went into creating this object. The calligraphy is mesmerizing. Each letter has a perfect, mathematical precision, yet also a fluid, living grace. The downstrokes are bold and confident, the upstrokes fine and delicate. It's a dance of ink on the page. Asterisk, you take a deep breath and begin to etch the first letter into the wax. You try to replicate the exact curve, the precise thickness of the line. Your first attempt is clumsy, a pale imitation. The letter is misshapen, leaning slightly, like a tree in a constant wind. You grimace, smooth the wax over with your thumb, and try again, and again, and again. Asterisk. This is a different kind of patience than the patience of preservation. This is the patience of creation. Al-Hassan has taught you that a good scribe is not born with a steady hand. A good scribe is born with a willingness to fail 1,000 times. Each letter is a building, he once told you. It must have a strong foundation, straight walls, and a graceful roof. You would not build a house in a single, hurried stroke. Do not treat a letter with less respect. Asterisk, as you work, you become lost in the details. You notice the tiny, almost invisible serifs at the end of each stroke. You see how the scribe has subtly varied the spacing between letters to create a pleasing visual rhythm across the line. A quirky detail you notice is that the ink, made from soot and gum Arabic, has a slightly raised texture. If you are so absorbed in your struggle with the elegant curves of the Kufic script that you don't hear the front door of the library groan open. It's only when a sliver of bright, midday sunlight cuts across the floor that you look up, blinking. A figure stands silhouetted in the antechamber, waiting patiently for his eyes to adjust to the gloom. Al-Hassan rises slowly from his own mat, where he has been quietly mending a book clasp. Asterisk, peace be upon you, Omar, Al-Hassan says, his voice soft but clear. Asterisk, and upon you, Master Al-Hassan, the visitor replies. He steps through the arched doorway, and you see him properly. He is an old man, older even than your master, with a trimmed white beard and the serene, thoughtful face of a scholar. He is dressed in a simple but fine blue robe, the deep indigo dye, a sign of some wealth. This is Omar, a professor of logic from the Sankar University. He is a regular visitor, one of the few people Al-Hassan allows to consult the library's most precious texts. Asterisk. His visit is a quiet reminder that this place is not a museum. It is not a dusty archive where books go to die. It is a living, breathing center of learning, a vital resource for the intellectual heart of the city. The manuscripts are here to be protected, yes, but they are also here to be read, to be argued with, to be built upon. A book that is never opened is little more than a decorated brick. Asterisk. Omar bows his head slightly to you, a gesture of respect that makes you feel both proud and sheepish. You are just an apprentice, a boy learning to make his letters in wax. He sees you not for who you are, but for the role you inhabit, a future guardian of this knowledge. You incline your head in return, your cheeks flushing slightly. Asterisk. I have been wrestling with Ibn Rushdie's commentary on Aristotle's metaphysics, Omar says to Al-Hassan, a note of weary excitement in his voice. He speaks of the active intellect, but his argument feels incomplete. I need to consult the master himself. Do you still have the copy that came from Cordoba? Asterisk. Al-Hassan nods slowly. The Cordoban Aristotle. Yes, it is resting. Asterisk. It's a phrase you've heard him use before. Books are never just in the chest. They are resting. It imbues them with a sense of life, of agency. Al-Hassan walks to the same brass-bound chest from which he retrieved the meadows of gold and lifts out another volume. This one is smaller, bound in a dark, almost black leather, and looks incredibly ancient. The leather is cracked in places, and the corners are worn round with centuries of handling. He carries it to the Kursi bookstand, displacing the book you were studying, and gently opens it. Asterisk, the pages are parchment, thin and delicate, and the script is a tight, compact Andalusian style that is difficult to read. The margins are filled with generations of notes, a dense web of commentary from scholars who have wrestled with these same ideas in Cordoba, in Fez, and now here in Timbuktu. Omar leans over the book, his eyes alight with a fervor you recognize. It's the thrill of the hunt, the intellectual chase. He doesn't touch the book. Al-Hassan is permitted to do that, but he leans so close, his beard almost brushes the page. Asterisk. Ah, yes, he breathes, his finger hovering over a line of text. There it is, the original Greek term, right here in the margin. I knew Ibn Rushd was translating it loosely. Asterisk, this moment is a perfect illustration of Timbuktu's unique role in history. Here, in a library on the edge of the Sahara, a scholar is consulting a Greek text, written in Arabic, that was copied in Spain, to clarify a philosophical point in a debate that originated in ancient Athens. It's a stunning demonstration of the interconnectedness of the medieval world. Timbuktu was not an isolated outpost. It was a critical node in a global network of knowledge that stretched from Europe to the Middle East and deep into Africa. A lesser-known fact is that many of these books were not owned by the libraries, but were held in trust. A wealthy pilgrim on his way to Mecca might leave his personal library with a trusted scholar in Timbuktu for safekeeping, a practice that enriched the city's intellectual stores for generations. Historians still debate the legal and social mechanics of these arrangements. Was it a formal deposit system, or an informal one built entirely on trust and reputation? The evidence suggests a deeply personal system, where the reputation of a man like Al-Hassan was more binding than any written contract. Asterisk, you watch as Omar and Al-Hassan engage in a quiet, intense discussion. They point to passages, whisper arguments, and compare the text to another that Al-Hassan retrieves. It's a beautiful, quiet drama. You are witnessing the very act of scholarship, the slow, careful construction of understanding. They are not just reading. They are interrogating the text, placing it in conversation with other texts, and forging a new link in a chain of thought that is thousands of years old. Asterisk, you sit quietly on your mat, your wax tablet forgotten in your lap. You are an observer on the shore of a great ocean of learning. You don't understand the fine points of Aristotelian philosophy they are debating, but you understand the passion. You understand the reverence, and you understand, more deeply than ever, why your job is so important. The salt paste, the camel hair brush, the endless dusting, it's all in service of this moment. It's all to ensure that when a man like Omar has a question that burns in his mind, the answer, or at least the path to an answer, is here, resting, waiting for him in the cool, quiet dark of the library. Asterisk, after an hour of intense, whispered debate, Omar, the scholar, finally straightens up, a look of deep satisfaction on his face. He thanks Al-Hassan profusely, his question seemingly resolved, or at least illuminated. He gives you another respectful nod before departing, disappearing back into the now bright glare of the midday sun, leaving the library to its quiet gloom once more. Al-Hassan carefully closes the ancient Cordoban Aristotle, his movements slow and tender, and places it back in its chest to rest. The performance is over. Asterisk, he then turns to you, his expression shifting from that of a scholarly colleague to that of a master craftsman. He gestures to a small pile of books on a low shelf, separate from the main collection. These are the patients, as he calls them, books in need of repair. Asterisk, studying the master's hand is important, he says, picking up a small, unassuming volume from the pile. But knowledge is useless if the vessel that holds it crumbles. Today, you will learn to mend. Asterisk, he hands you the book. It's a collection of local poetry, its leather cover scuffed and dry. But the main problem is with the binding. A few of the sections, the small gatherings of pages called quires, have come loose from the spine. When you open the book, a chunk of pages threatens to fall out completely. The threads that hold the book together have broken. Asterisk. A book is like a body, Al-Hassan explains, tapping the frayed threads. The pages are the flesh, the cover is the skin, but the binding is the spine. If the spine breaks, the body falls apart. Asterisk. Your task is to perform a simple but delicate surgery. You are not rebinding the entire book, which is a highly advanced skill. You are simply reattaching the loose quires, a process called tipping in. He leads you to the small workbench, where he keeps his tools. There are no power tools or complex machinery here. The tools of a Timbuktu bookbinder are simple and elegant. Sharp knives, bone folders for creasing paper, a small hand drill, and, most importantly, needles and thread. Asterisk. He hands you a long, curved needle and a spool of thick, undyed cotton thread. The thread must be strong, but not so strong that it is sharper than the paper, he instructs. A thread that is too harsh will simply cut through the old parchment over time. You are mending, not causing a new wound. This is a core principle of conservation that is still used today. Any repair should be reversible and should not be stronger than the original material. Asterisk. First, he shows you how to prepare the book. You must find the center of the loose section of pages and, using a pointed tool called an awl, gently reopen the original sewing holes. You are not making new holes. You are following the ghost of the original bookbinder. It's a delicate process, and you have to be careful not to tear the fragile paper. Asterisk. Then comes the sewing. This is the part that makes your palms sweat. Al-Hassan demonstrates the technique, a complex-looking pattern of loops and knots, called a kettle stitch. He passes the needle through the center of the quire, out through the back, loops it around the existing threads of the securely attached sections, and then back into the loose section. His hands move with a fluid, mesmerizing economy of motion that makes it look easy. It is not. Asterisk. Now, it's your turn. You take the needle, your fingers feeling clumsy and large. You push the needle through the first hole. So far, so good. Then you try to loop it around the existing binding threads. Your first attempt is to loose, leaving a sloppy loop of thread. Al-Hassan makes a quiet TSK sound. Tension, he says. Everything is tension. The thread must be taut, but not strangling the paper. You must feel it. Asterisk. You pull the thread out and try again. This time you pull too tight, and you hear a faint, sickening tearing sound as the thread bites into the edge of the old paper. You freeze, horrified. You have wounded the patient. Asterisk. Al-Hassan places a calming hand on your shoulder. It happens, he says, his voice devoid of anger. The paper is brittle. This is why we practice on the poets, not the philosophers. Smooth the tear. We will reinforce it later with a small piece of papyrus. Continue, but this time, feel the paper's fragility. Listen to it. When you tie the final, secure knot on your bookmending project, Al-Hassan inspects your work with a critical but approving eye. It will hold, he says, which from him is high praise. The body is mended. Now it is time to feed our own. He gestures towards the narrow staircase you saw when you first arrived. The sun is too high to be on the street. We will take our meal on the roof. Asterisk. You carefully place your mended book with the others that are waiting for minor repairs and follow your master up the steep, narrow stairs. The stairwell is dark and enclosed, the mud brick steps worn into shallow bowls by years of use. As you ascend, the air grows warmer, and you can hear the faint, muffled hum of the city outside. You emerge onto the flat roof, and the change is instantaneous and dramatic. Asterisk. You are hit by a wall of heat and a blast of brilliant, almost blinding light. You have to squint, your eyes accustomed to the cool gloom of the library. The sky is a vast, endless dome of the most intense, pale blue, completely empty of clouds. The sun is a white-hot coin, directly overhead, beating down with a physical weight. The heat is not the gentle warmth of the morning. It's a dry, powerful, oven-like heat that seems to suck the moisture from your skin. You understand immediately why the streets of Timbuktu are so narrow. To be caught in a wide open square at this time of day would be brutal. Asterisk the roof, like the walls, is made of hard-packed earth. It's not perfectly flat, but slopes gently towards a small spout that will channel water away during the rare rains. Around the perimeter is a low wall, just high enough to sit on, offering a sliver of shade on one side. Al-Hassan is already there, sitting on a reed mat in that small patch of shadow, unpacking your midday meal from a small basket. Asterisk, the meal is simple but satisfying. There are small, dense balls of millet, a staple grain, along with a piece of dried fish, salty and chewy, and a handful of dates. Their sweetness a perfect counterpoint to the salt of the fish. You also share a small gourd of soured goat's milk, its tangy coolness a welcome relief in the heat. There's a certain genius to this desert diet. The dried and salted foods don't spoil in the heat, and the dates provide a quick, powerful burst of energy. You eat in comfortable silence, the way two people who spend all day together often do. Asterisk from your perch on the roof. You have a stunning, panoramic view of the city. Timbuktu sprawls below you, a sea of flat-roofed earthen buildings in shades of ochre, brown, and red. It looks like a city sculpted from a single piece of clay. The only structures that break the uniform flatness are the great mosques, the iconic pyramid-shaped minaret of the twin towers of Saqqara, and the smaller form of Sidi Oya. The torrent beams sticking out of every wall give the cityscape that unique, bristly texture, like the back of a giant, sleeping hedgehog. Asterisk, it's a surprisingly quiet view. The midday heat has driven most people indoors. The bustling market you passed this morning is now subdued, its stalls covered with cloths, its patrons gone to seek shelter. You see a few figures moving slowly through the slivers of shadow in the narrow streets below, but the city seems to be taking a collective siesta. The only significant movement is a long, slow-moving caravan of camels you can see in the distance. Just arriving at the city's edge, their forms wavering in the shimmering heat, haze rising from the desert floor. It's a powerful reminder of the city's lifeline to the outside world. Asterisk, a quirky, lesser-known detail of Timbuktu's urban layout is the placement of kitchens. In many homes, especially those of the wealthy, kitchens were often located on the roof. This was a brilliant, practical solution. It kept the heat and smoke from cooking out of the main living quarters, making the homes much more comfortable. Historians still wonder if this was a common practice throughout the city, or only among certain classes. Looking around, you can see a few wisps of smoke rising from other rooftops, suggesting that other households are also preparing their midday meal in the open air. Asterisk, as you finish your dates. You watch a flock of pigeons wheel and turn in the air above the Jingerbur Mosque, their wings flashing white against the blue sky. The silence on the rooftop is not empty. It's filled with the low ambient hum of the city at rest, the distant braying of a donkey, and the gentle, rustling sound of the wind as it eddies around the corners of the building. Asterisk, Al-Hassan leans back against the low wall, his eyes closed, enjoying the warmth on his face now that he's in the shade. From up here, he says, without opening his eyes, you see the city as a whole. Down there, he gestures vaguely towards the streets. It is a maze. Up here, you see the pattern. It is the same with knowledge. When you are studying one line of one book, you are lost in the maze. Only when you have studied many books can you climb to the rooftop and see how they all connect. Asterisk, it's another one of his simple, profound lessons. You look out over the city, at the interconnected rooftops and the winding, shadowed streets, and you understand exactly what he means. Your work in the library, the dusting, the mending, the copying, it's not a series of disconnected tasks. It's all part of building your own rooftop, a place from which you will one day be able to see the whole, beautiful pattern of knowledge. Asterisk, you sit in the comfortable silence for a while longer, the warmth of the sun and the full feeling in your belly making you pleasantly drowsy. The rooftop offers a rare moment of expansive stillness in a life spent in enclosed spaces, either the narrow alleys of the city or the cloistered quiet of the library. Al-Hassan seems to be in a reflective mood, his usual reserve softened by the peacefulness of the afternoon. Asterisk that book you were mending, he says, his eyes still closed against the bright, indirect light. The book of poems. It has a story. Asterisk you turn to look at him, intrigued. For Al-Hassan, every book has a history. Who wrote it? Who owned it? But when he says it has a story, he means something more. He means it has had an adventure. Asterisk it is not a grand or ancient text, he begins, his voice taking on the familiar, rhythmic cadence of a storyteller. It was written only 50 years ago, by a poet from Jen. He was not famous, but his words had a certain sweetness. A merchant, a friend of the Akit family, purchased it on a trip and decided to bring it back to Timbuktu as a gift. Asterisk, he pauses, and you can almost see the scene in your mind. The bustling markets of Jen, another great city of mud brick architecture. The merchant carefully wrapping the small book of poetry in cloth. To protect it on his journey, asterisk the merchant joined a caravan traveling north along the river. But this was during the season of unpredictable storms. One afternoon, the sky turned the color of a bruise, and a fierce wind rose up, carrying with it a wall of sand. A sandstorm. The camels panicked. The men scattered, seeking shelter. The caravan was broken. Asterisk Al-Hassan's voice is calm, but his words paint a picture of chaos and fear. You've heard tales of the desert sandstorms, how they can strip paint from wood and bury a man in minutes. Asterisk, the merchant survived, finding shelter behind a rocky outcrop, but in the chaos, some of his goods were lost, torn from the back of his panicked camel. Among them was the small book of poetry. When the storm passed, he searched for hours, sifting through the newly formed dunes, but it was gone. He assumed it was lost forever, buried beneath the sand, and he continued his journey to Timbuktu with a heavy heart, more upset about the lost gift than his other, more valuable merchandise. Asterisk you look over at the pile of books waiting for repair, at the little volume whose spine you just stitched back together. It's hard to imagine it lying abandoned in the vast empty desert. Asterisk a season passed. Al-Hassan continues, a Tuareg scout, one of the desert people who know the sands better than we know our own homes, was tracking a lost goat. He was miles from any regular trade route. He stopped to rest his camel and noticed a small piece of dark leather sticking out of the sand, uncovered by the shifting winds. Curious, he dug it out. Asterisk, it was the book. The Tuareg man could not read, but he recognized the craftsmanship. He knew it was an object of value to the people of the cities. So he tucked it into his saddlebag. He did not know that the salt in his bag, which he carried for his animals, was slowly seeping into the cover, protecting the leather from the worst of the dryness. Asterisk, this is a beautiful, accidental detail. The very culture of the desert, the casual transport of salt, inadvertently saved the book. It's a quiet piece of poetry in itself. Asterisk, months later, the Tuareg scout came to Timbuktu to trade. He wandered the market, and among the other things he had to offer some hides, some desert herbs. He presented the book. He didn't know its worth, only that it was a talking thing, as his people sometimes called books. The merchant who had originally lost it happened to be in the market that very day. He saw the book, and his heart leaped. He recognized it immediately from a unique tool mark on the cover. Asterisk. This is another fascinating historical tidbit. Many bookbinders had their own unique decorative stamps, small metal tools they used to impress patterns into the leather. These functioned almost like a signature, and an experienced eye could recognize a binder's work from these marks alone. Historians sometimes use these unique tools to trace the origin and movement of manuscripts when no other information is available. Asterisk. The sun begins its slow descent from its zenith. and the sliver of shade on the rooftop starts to lengthen. The fierce, oppressive heat softens into a more manageable warmth. It's time to return to the cool embrace of the library. You follow Al-Hassan back down the narrow, dark staircase, your eyes once again adjusting to the gentle gloom. The air feels wonderfully cool, and the familiar scent of old paper and leather welcomes you back. Al-Hassan does not set you a new task. Instead, he sits on his mat, gesturing for you to sit opposite him. The afternoon is for reflection, for the quiet digestion of the day's work and the day's meal. This, you have learned, is as much a part of the routine as the dusting and mending. A mind, like a muscle, needs rest to grow stronger. The merchant, Al-Hassan says, picking up the thread of his earlier story, was happier to have recovered that book of poems than if he had recovered a lost bag of gold dust. Why do you think that is? It's a genuine question, not a test. He is asking for your thoughts. You consider it for a moment, the silence of the library seeming to deepen around you, because the gold can be replaced. You say, thinking aloud, there is more gold in the ground. But that book, it was the only one exactly like it in the world. Al-Hassan nods slowly, a flicker of approval in his eyes. That is the heart of it. The Mali Empire is wealthy. Our Mansa, our king, is famous across the world for the gold he spends. But the gold is just dust. It is heavy, but it is silent. It has no story, no voice. Knowledge is heavier than gold. It has weight in the soul. He leans forward, his expression earnest. When Mansa Musa, our great emperor, made his pilgrimage to Mecca, what did the world notice? They noticed the gold he gave away. But what did he bring back? He did not bring back more gold. He brought back scholars, architects, books. He understood that what makes a city, what makes an empire truly great, is not the treasure in its vaults, but the knowledge in its libraries. This is a widely accepted historical fact, and a cornerstone of Timbuktu's identity. The 14th century pilgrimage of Mansa Musa was a legendary event. He traveled with such a vast entourage, and spent so much gold in cities like Cairo, that he reportedly depressed the local economy for a decade. But the more lasting impact was the intellectual flourishing that followed, as he invested heavily in turning Timbuktu into a world-class center of Islamic scholarship. Gold can build a palace, Al-Hassan continues, his voice a low, rhythmic murmur, but only knowledge can build a just society. Gold can buy you a fine robe, but only knowledge can clothe your mind. This is why we are here. This is why the Akayat family and others like them spend their fortunes not on armies or grand monuments, but on this. He sweeps a hand around the room, at the niches filled with silent, waiting books. You look around the room with fresh eyes. You are not just in a building full of old books. You are in the engine room of an empire, a quiet, dusty space that generates the real power of the Malian state. The power of ideas. The power of law, of science, of faith, of history. It's a staggering thought. The work you do here, the mundane, patient work of preservation, is an act of statecraft. It is an act of building and sustaining a civilization. A lesser-known detail about this scholarly culture was its emphasis on memorization. While the written word was revered, the ideal scholar was one who had committed entire books to memory. The manuscript was seen as a reference, a backup, but the true library was the one a man carried in his own head. Historians debate whether this was a practical measure due to the scarcity of books or a philosophical ideal. Perhaps it was both. A book could be lost, as the story of the poetry volume showed, but knowledge, once committed to memory, was truly yours. Al-Hassan himself was said to have the entire Quran and hundreds of poems memorized. Do not ever be ashamed of this quiet life, he says, as if reading your thoughts. Your friends who were apprenticed to merchants or craftsmen sometimes joked about your sleepy job. They see you go into this dark room and see you leave. They do not see what happens within. They do not understand the weight of what you hold. Let them trade in salt and gold. We trade in time. We hold the words of men who died 1,000 years ago and pass them to men who will not be born for 1,000 more. It is a sacred trust. It is heavier and more precious than any metal. His words settle into the quiet of the room, as profound and as permanent as the building's thick earthen walls. You feel a sense of purpose so deep it almost makes you dizzy. You are part of a chain, a living conduit for the flow of human thought across the ages. The weight of this responsibility is immense, but it is not a burden. It is an anchor. It gives your small, quiet life a meaning and a significance that feels as vast as the desert sky. Your job is not sleepy. It is the most awake job in the world, for you are keeping the mind of the world from falling into the long, silent sleep of forgetting. As Al-Hassan's words settle in the quiet room, the quality of the light begins to change once more. The single sharp-edged beam from the high window has vanished, replaced by a diffuse, gentle, golden glow that fills the entire antechamber. The fierce heat of the day is breaking, and the city outside is beginning to stir from its afternoon slumber. For you, this shift in the light signals the final phase of your workday, putting the library to bed. The process is the reverse of the morning's ritual, a slow and deliberate securing of the treasures for the night. Al-Hassan rises, his joints cracking softly, and you rise with him. The first task is to ensure any books that were consulted during the day are properly put away. You take the book of poetry you mended, its spine now strong and secure, and gently place it back on the patient's shelf, where it will rest before being returned to the main collection. Al-Hassan himself retrieves the magnificent meadows of gold from the Kursi stand. Before closing it, he takes a moment to fan the pages gently, a practice that ensures any lingering moisture from the day's air is whisked away before the book is sealed in its chest. He then closes the large volume, his hands moving with practiced reverence, and secures the leather thong. You hold the lid of the heavy brass-bound chest open for him, and he lowers the book into its place. The sound of the heavy lid closing is a sound of finality, of safety. The ancient voice is silent again until a new day calls for it. Your next task is to manage the enemies one last time. You go to the small bags of cloves and herbs that you set aside this morning, the ones that felt damp. You carry them out to the small, enclosed courtyard behind the library. The air here is still warm, but the sun is low enough that it is no longer punishing. You lay the bags out on a clean, flat stone that has been baking in the sun all day. The intense, dry heat of the stone will quickly draw the moisture out, recharging them for use tomorrow. It's a simple, sustainable cycle of preservation. While in the courtyard, you also attend to the ink. Al-Hassan has a small batch of ink brewing in a clay pot, a viscous, dark liquid made from oak galls, ferrous sulfate, and gum arabic. It has been sitting in the sun, the heat helping the chemical reactions that give the ink its deep, permanent color. You give it a gentle stir with a wooden stick. The recipe for this ink is a closely guarded secret, passed down from scribe to scribe. A lesser-known quirk of these inks is their color change. When first applied, the ink is often a pale, brownish color. It only darkens to a deep black or rich brown as it oxidizes on the page. A slow, magical transformation. Getting the formula right, so it doesn't fade over centuries or, even worse, eat through the paper, is a high art. You return to the library, where Al-Hassan is making a final inspection. He walks the perimeter of the room, his eyes scanning the niches, the floor, the base of the walls. He is looking for anything out of place, a book not sitting correctly, a fresh crack in the mud plaster, the telltale sign of a termite tube. He moves like a ship's captain, making a final tour of his vessel before a storm. His vigilance is the library's best defense. Historians still wonder about the cataloging systems of these private libraries. Were there written lists of the contents? Or was the entire catalog held in the phenomenal memory of the head librarian? The evidence is sparse, but it points towards the latter. Al-Hassan has no written list. He knows the location, condition, and history of every single one of the thousands of books in his care. He is the living index of this entire world of knowledge. When he walks the room, he is not just inspecting. He is taking a mental inventory, ensuring every soldier is in his barracks. Your final task is to sweep the floor. You take a soft broom made of bundled grasses and begin to sweep the smooth earthen floor. You move slowly, carefully, so as not to raise too much dust into the air. You sweep the fine red sand that has been tracked in, the stray bits of thread from your mending, the general detritus of a day's work. It's a humble, meditative task. As you sweep, you gather the physical traces of the day into a small pile. The act of cleaning the space feels like you are clearing your own mind, tidying away the thoughts of the day and preparing for the rest of the evening. When the floor is clean and Al-Hassan has completed his inspection, he nods to you. The day's work is done. He walks to the main lamp, the only source of light in the room. You pull the heavy library door shut behind you, and the sound of the iron latch falling into place echoes in the narrow street. It's a sound of conclusion, the final punctuation mark on a long and meaningful day. You stand for a moment beside Al-Hassan, letting your senses adjust to the outside world. Asterisk, the city you step back into is not the same one you left this morning. The fierce, white-hot glare of midday has been replaced by a soft, warm, honey-colored light that bathes the earthen buildings in a gentle glow. The air is no longer still and oppressive. A soft, cool breeze is beginning to drift in from the desert, carrying with it the clean, mineral scent of the cooling sand. The city is alive again. Asterisk, the streets are no longer empty. The oppressive heat of the afternoon has lifted, and the people of Timbuktu have emerged from their homes to enjoy the cool of the evening. The sound of voices, of laughter, of children playing, fills the air. The market square, which was a silent, dusty stage at midday, is now bustling with renewed activity. Merchants are selling evening meals, their stalls lit by the flickering orange light of oil lamps. The scent of grilled fish and spicy stews hangs in the air, a delicious contrast to the dry, papery smell of your workday. Asterisk, you and Al-Hassan walk together in comfortable silence. Your journey home follows the reverse of your morning path, but the landmarks are transformed by the evening light. The Gingerbread Mosque is no longer just a silhouette against a brightening sky. Its mud brick walls are now a deep, rich ochre, and the setting sun casts long, dramatic shadows from its iconic minaret. Asterisk, as you walk, you pass a group of students sitting in a circle around their teacher in a small courtyard, reciting lessons from wooden tablets. Their voices rise and fall in a rhythmic chant, a sound as integral to the city as the call to prayer. You see two men engaged in a vigorous game of what looks like chess, using carved wooden pieces on a board drawn in the sand. Life, in all its simple, beautiful forms, is unfolding all around you. Asterisk, Al-Hassan stops at the corner where your paths diverge. He places a hand on your shoulder, his grip firm but gentle. "You did good work today," he says. It's a simple sentence, but coming from him, it feels as valuable as a bag of gold. Go home, rest. The books will be waiting for you tomorrow. He gives your shoulder a slight squeeze, and then turns and walks down his own street. His figure is steady in quiet dignity, soon disappearing into the growing twilight. Asterisk, you continue your walk home alone, your leather sandals making a soft, rhythmic shuffling sound in the sand. The sky above is a masterpiece of color, the western horizon a riot of fiery orange, deep pink, and soft violet. As the last sliver of the sun disappears, the first stars begin to appear, impossibly bright and clear in the dry desert air, in a city with no artificial lights to compete. The night sky is a breathtaking spectacle. Asterisk, a lesser-known aspect of life in this period was the importance of the night. With no electricity, the setting of the sun brought a profound shift in human activity. For many, it was a time for storytelling, for music, for quiet contemplation under the stars. The darkness was not something to be feared or conquered with artificial light. It was a natural and welcome part of the daily rhythm, a time for the community and the family to draw closer. Historians often wonder how this deep connection to the natural cycle of day and night shaped the psychology and creativity of the people. Did the profound darkness and the brilliant stars inspire a different kind of poetry, a different kind of philosophy? Asterisk, you arrive at your own familiar wooden door. As you pull it open, you are greeted by the warm smell of your family's evening meal and the soft light of a few oil lamps. Your day of silent, focused work is over. You are back in the warm, gentle embrace of home. You will eat, you will talk with your family, and soon you will lie down on your cool reed mat. Asterisk, as you lie in the darkness of your room, you can still feel the phantom sensation of the book in your hands, the dry, smooth leather, the gritty texture of the salt paste, the delicate fragility of the ancient pages. You think of the little book of poetry, safe now, its adventure over. You think of the great philosopher's words, resting in their chest, waiting for the next curious mind. You are tired, a deep, satisfying weariness in your bones, but your mind is calm and clear. You are a guardian, a mender, a link in a golden chain, and as you close your eyes, the quiet, papery scent of the library seems to follow you into your dreams, a silent promise of the important work that will be waiting for you when the sun rises again. Asterisk, the day is done. The heavy wooden door of the library is closed. The city outside is humming its gentle evening song, and you are settled, resting after a day of quiet, meaningful work. Let the memory of the day slowly dissolve, leaving behind only a feeling of calm and purpose. Feel the satisfying weight of your own body, the gentle rise and fall of your chest with each easy breath. Asterisk, there is no more work to be done. The books are safe, resting in the cool darkness, their ancient voices silent for the night. The salt stands guard. The thick walls hold them in a protective embrace. Your job is finished, and you have done it well. You can release all the focus, all the concentration of the day. Let it drift away like fine dust in the evening breeze. Asterisk, imagine the deep, velvety darkness of the library. It is not an empty darkness, but a full one, pregnant with stories and ideas, all sleeping peacefully. It is a silence full of wisdom, a stillness full of history. Allow that deep, peaceful quiet to seep into your own mind. There are no problems to solve, no questions to answer. There is only this moment of profound rest. Asterisk, your breath is a slow, gentle rhythm, a quiet anchor in the stillness of the night. Inhaling calm, exhaling the last traces of the day. Every breath carries you a little further away from the waking world, a little deeper into a state of peaceful repose. The little book of poetry is sleeping. The great works of philosophy are sleeping. And now, you too can drift into that same peaceful, restorative sleep. Your own story for the day now written and complete. There is nothing left to do but rest.